Many Muslims are taught that the Qur'an is not only spiritual guidance, but also a source of advanced scientific knowledge, knowledge that supposedly could not have come from a 7th century society. These claims are often presented with confidence, sometimes as proof of divine origin. But what happens if we slow down and examine them carefully, first through early Muslim scholarship, and only then through modern science? One quick note before we begin. Cosmology and astrology in Islamic scripture are a large and often problematic topic. The Qur'an and Hadith contain multiple claims about the heavens that raise serious questions, and those deserve a dedicated video of their own. We will come back to that separately. For now, let's focus on 5 popular science miracle examples. Let's start with water. In Surat Ar-Rahman, the Most Merciful, the Qur'an says, "He released the 2 seas, meeting each other between them is a barrier, they do not transgress." A similar description appears in Surat Al-Furqan, the Criterion, where sweet water and salty water are said to be separated by a boundary. Classical scholars such as Al-Tabari and Ibn Kathir understood these verses in a simple observational way. Rivers meet seas. Fresh and salty water appear different near their meeting points. The point of the verse is divine balance and order, not a technical description of ocean behavior. In modern apologetics, especially in the genre known as ijaz ilmi, scientific miracles, these verses are elevated into scientific predictions. Writers like Maurice Bucaille, followed by later Dawa media, claim the Qur'an describes invisible oceanic barriers discovered by modern science. Here's the simple science. Modern oceanography explains that the Mediterranean and Atlantic seas exchange water constantly through the Strait of Gibraltar. Because the Mediterranean loses large amounts of water through evaporation, it becomes saltier. Lighter Atlantic water flows in at the surface, while denser Mediterranean water flows out beneath it. Over time, these waters mix. This process is known as a 2-layer exchange flow and has been studied in detail by oceanographers such as Henry Bryden. So yes, different waters can look separate for a time. But no, there is no permanent barrier. The waters do mix continuously. A brief note on Jacques Cousteau, since his name is often mentioned here. Cousteau was a 20th century French naval officer and ocean explorer, born in 1910 and died in 1997. He became famous for documentaries and books about marine life and helped popularize scuba diving. There is no reliable evidence from his own writings or interviews that he connected his work to the Qur'an or converted to Islam. That story circulates mainly in online apologetic material. Now mountains. The Qur'an repeatedly says mountains were placed so that the earth would not shake with you, and it describes them as autad, pegs. For example, in Surat An-Naba, the tidings, and Surat An-Nal, the bee. Classical interpretation here is literal. Mountains are stabilizers. This idea also appears explicitly in Hadith. In Jami at-Tirmidhi, there is a report stating that when Allah created the earth, it began to shake, and mountains were created, after which it settled. This is reported in Tirmidhi. Modern miracle advocates often reinterpret mountains through geology, arguing that they have deep roots that stabilize the earth. This claim is commonly promoted by figures such as Zaghlul el-Nagar and other scientific miracle writers, but the basic geology is easy to explain. Mountains form because the Earth's crust is moving. The Himalayas, for example, are still rising today because the Indian plate continues to push into the Eurasian plate. The same movement produces earthquakes in the region. Mountains are not preventing shaking, they are created by the same forces that cause it. Some mountains are volcanic. Volcanoes are openings in the earth where molten rock erupts and gradually builds a mountain-shaped structure. These are not stabilizers either. They are signs of geological activity, not solutions to it. So, the Quranic and Hadith claim is not that mountains appear because of tectonics, but that they were placed to stop the earth from shaking. That idea does not match how the planet actually behaves. Next, human reproduction. In Surat At-Tariq, the Nightcomer, the Quran says that man is created from a gushing fluid that comes from between the backbone and the ribs. Classical tafsir is clear and consistent. Ibn Kathir explains that the backbone refers to the man's loins, and the ribs refer to the woman's chest area. and he traces this explanation to early authorities such as Ibn Abbas. The same explanation appears widely across early tafsir literature. This fits well with ancient medical ideas. In Greek medicine, figures like Hippocrates believed that semen came from the whole body, not from a specific reproductive organ as understood today. Similar views appear throughout the Greco-Roman and Near Eastern world. Modern defenders often try to reinterpret the verse. Some argue it refers to internal organs or nerves. Others claim it points to embryonic development or early organ formation. These approaches are common in modern apologetic writings. But put simply, semen is produced in the testes and associated glands, which are not located between the backbone and ribs, and women do not produce semen at all. The classical meaning aligns with ancient physiology, not modern anatomy. This reflects how Greek medical ideas, especially those of Hippocrates and Galen, were absorbed and transmitted by Muslim scholars after the Arab conquests of Byzantine lands. Much of this knowledge survived because of that transmission. But survival does not equal accuracy. Many of these theories were wrong by modern standards, and the Quranic description fits squarely within that pre-modern framework rather than correcting it. Now iron. In Surat al-Hadid, iron, the Quran says, "We sent down iron," using the verb anzalna, meaning sent down. Classical scholars understood this as God providing iron for human benefit, just as the Quran speaks about God sending down rain, livestock, and clothing. No early scholar connects this verse to astronomy or outer space. Modern miracle writers often claim that sent down refers to iron coming from stars or meteorites, presenting this as a hidden scientific truth, again popularized in the scientific miracle genre. But iron exists on Earth because the planet formed from early solar system material that already contained iron. Iron did not appear on Earth through later eruptions or a special descent from the sky. It was part of the planet from its formation, with most of it sinking early into the core and the rest gradually redistributed toward the surface through normal geological processes, including volcanism. Some iron does arrive via meteorites, but it has been a natural part of Earth itself since its early days. The verse does not point clearly to astrophysics. That interpretation is added later. Finally, the verse often used to suggest that the Qur'an hints at a spherical Earth. In Surat Az-Zumar, the groups, the Qur'an says God yukawiru, the night over the day and the day over the night, using a verb associated with wrapping or winding. Classical scholars understood this as a poetic description of alternation, night covering day and day covering night. No early mufassir used this verse to argue that the Earth is round. Some Muslim scholars did accept a spherical Earth, but they did so through astronomy, not through Quranic interpretation. Greek astronomers such as Ptolemy had already described a spherical Earth centuries before Islam. Ibn Sina Avicenna, who lived in the 10th and early 11th century, worked within a Ptolemaic astronomical framework. Al-Biruni, who lived around the same period, explicitly treated the Earth as spherical in his scientific works on geography and coordinates. Both lived roughly 3 to 4 centuries after the Qur'an was revealed. And neither presented the Qur'an as the source of this knowledge. So the idea that the Qur'an itself clearly teaches Earth's sphericity is a modern apologetic claim, not a historical one. When you put these examples side by side, a clear pattern emerges. Early Muslim scholars interpreted these verses plainly, using the best knowledge available in their time. Nothing was hidden, nothing was symbolic science, and nothing required linguistic gymnastics. The meanings were direct and reflected late antique views of the natural world. Modern scientific miracle claims appear only after scientific discoveries are made. More importantly, they do not uncover new knowledge in the text. They attempt to rescue statements that, taken at face value, conflict with what we now know about geology, biology, and the physical world. There is nothing wrong with rereading scripture as human knowledge advances. Religions have always done that. What is damaging is something else. What we see here is not the Qur'an anticipating science, but making concrete claims about nature that turn out to be wrong, and then being reinterpreted only after those errors become impossible to ignore. And that leads to a sharper question. If the Qur'an is meant to be clear guidance which is impeccable and comes from the all-knowing God, is it reasonable to believe that it would repeatedly describe the natural world in ways that modern science shows to be incorrect? Would a true and universal scripture require reinterpretation after the fact to avoid contradiction? That is not just a question of belief. It is a question of objective inquiry. If you like this video, leave your thoughts in the comments. If you want a specific topic explored next, let us know. Subscribe to the channel. Ergo dubito. Think critically.